Baruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem B'Shem Eden Shir. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov on Kiddush במקום Seuda. What counts? Ma'as Achila L'Inyan Kiddush במקום Seuda. Of Great Schools is sponsoring a shir. Call Eden Shir 718-851-8651. Email ist@yeshivanet.com. Harav Smith.
We had in the yeshiva a bracha that is celiac, which means he can't eat any wheat products. And basically he asked the question, what does he do about Kiddush? He wants to have Kiddush like the yeshiva has after davening, then they have a seudah, and then they have a seudah. But it's hard for him to wait to have his seudah, because there he has some foods that he could eat. But what else could be used for makam seudah if he can't have any wheat products? Then we heard a really interesting shayla. Someone wanted to use rice cakes for Kiddush makam seudah. Very interesting question. Someone wanted to use sushi. I guess that's typical of American life. But the emphasis is not only get to people with unusual diets, as we'll see. The question is, how much cake do you have to eat? Can you be yotzei with wine or grape juice? Can you use it at night? Leil Shabbos to have Kiddush makam seudah and later have a seudah. Yom Tiv, Simchas Torah, Rosh Hashana. So the truth is, it's a challenging sugya because there's very little in the Gemara, and even in Shulchan Aruch there's very little about this sugya. But like every other sugya, as we'll see once we get the yotzei of Kiddush makam seudah, I hope the rest should be simple. The concept of Kiddush makam seudah is based on a Gemara in Pesachim Daf Kuf Aleph, where the Gemara says if someone made a Kiddush, 100% perfect Kiddush, but it wasn't b'mekayim seudah, after they Kiddush la yotzei. You're not yotzei. It's mamish like making Kiddush without wine, even though he said every word. And this the Gemara says, and Gemara in fact tells a story how Abaye was careful, make sure that when you make Kiddush, it should be b'mekayim seudah. Now, Lamaisa, there is a different halacha, which is not today's shir. I just want to mention it very briefly. If I make Kiddush in shul, let's say, and then before I eat any cake, I realize, oh, it's later than I thought, I have to hang up, my family's waiting. So I just run home and I wash. I'm also not yotzei, because there, it's not b'mekayim seudah. I made Kiddush in shul, and I'm going to eat at home. That's no good. That was a change of location. That's a different sugya. Today, the focus is the word seudah. What does it mean, seudah? Is cake good enough? Is wine good enough? Is rice cake good enough? And maybe you want to be a little derech tzachas. Today, the question is, what is b'mekayim seudah? Like a b'mekayim kayin. Because we all know, Kiddush makam seudah simply means you have to have a seudah to wash. What else works for Kiddush b'mekayim seudah? So the Maisa, again, the Mechaber Reisha and Gimel, Sif Gimel, is very brief and very clear. In Kiddush v'lo Soad, he didn't have a seudah, afi de Kiddush la yotzei. Period. I once had a shayla, a shayla happens once in 50 years, if it's a true story. It was Rosh Hashana night, and he made Kiddush, and then he made a moitzi, and he cut the challah, but unfortunately he cut his finger also. I think the problem is because he sharpened his knife. It's a schooler for panosa, but he got a cut on from his finger. So he bit into it and he tried to, stop the bleeding. It didn't stop. And he realized it's a serious cut, so he had to schlep to a doctor that lived not far away. Bekitza, he worked in it, and he had a butterfly stitch, like using a band-aid to close up the wound. He came home a half hour later, and he realized he has to make Kiddush over l'chayr. Because he had Kiddush, he had only a bite of challah, and he left. So the Kiddush wasn't b'mekayim seudah. So the truth is, the Mishnah in Sifkat and Yud Beis as a suffix, maybe if you come back to the same location. No. What I found maveldik, Rabbi Yosef Slutzka, the truth is the end of Siman Zayin, he quotes his Groiser Rebbe, Rabbi Chaim Volozhiner, that says that just like when you change location, you have to make a bracha, and aniach miktzas chaverim, it's not a shinu makayim. Maybe for Kiddush, it's also not a shinu makayim, as if he never left. But Rabbi Yashiv in the Ashrei Ish Amar Ayin wonders, how does that have shaykhs? He didn't start the seudah yet. So Lamaisa, this person made Kiddush over, and he's probably right. We'll soon see the only redeeming factor is if he drank extra wine, which might work, but most say it doesn't work at night, it only works by day. But we'll get back to that shayla. But no doubt about it, Kiddush b'mekayim seudah is ma'akiv. Okay. The Rosh in Pesachim, and that's the Rabbi Kiva Eiga in the beginning of Reish Samach Gimel explains the Rosh, that Kiddush b'mkom seudah is a chi of deraisa. The whole Kiddush, we know, is a deraisa. But you could be yotzei Kiddush b'dvarim by saying davening. But we decide, and we want to make Kiddush ala kois deraisa. So Taka the Rosh says this, and the Pri Megadim in Reish Samach Tes Yivkat Aleph also says it, as Yeshua's Yakov, Reish Ayin Aleph Yud, that since our Kiddush we could assume is deraisa ala kois because we want to be yotzei Kiddush b'dvarim with that. If you don't have b'mkom seudah, midaraisa is not yotzei Kiddush. In other words, the Kiddush b'mkom seudah is like making Kiddush al gabi kois. Without a kois you're not yotzei, without b'mkom seudah you're not yotzei. And this explains why many people don't eat by day Kiddush in shul. They come home and they make a Kiddush b'mkom seudah gemura. But l'maisa, the Poik Chazid, the minhag ha'olam is to eat in shul. They have a Kiddush in shul and your Seuda in the house. And people have a Zahirus in the Kiddush Rabbah that people have, a huge Kiddush. The question is, why, how does that work? So the emes is, you could wonder, what does it mean Kiddush b'mkom seudah? I want to call it a Chakira. Is the pshat that it's a din in the Kiddush? The Kiddush becomes chashiv when you have a seudah with it. Otherwise it's tam gesagt. Or maybe just the opposite is a din in the seudah. A yid has a Shabbos seudah, cross a Shabbos oinig. We want to make it even more heilig, more dahaibin. What do we say? Make Kiddush by the seudah. So we'll soon see other nafkaminas, but it makes sense if the yotzei of Kiddush Makam Seudah is that we want to enhance the seudah. So where's your seudah? You go to shul, you make Kiddush, you have a piece of cake, and you go home. That's not your seudah.
But you're making that thing Kiddush.
Good, I understand. You're yotzei, but what is pshat making Kiddush in shul? You're not enhancing a seudah. But if the word is that you want to enhance the Kiddush, so you're eating something. So let's see the sugya, okay? The Rashbam, on that Gemara in Pesachim Kuf Aleph, Zok the Rashbam, Ein Kiddush Makam Seudah, D'chsiv, the pasuk in Yeshaya, V'karos l'Shabbos oinig. B'makam she'ata koyre l'Shabbos, kloim b'kriya, the Kiddush. Where should that be? Sham tehei oinig. You have to have the oinig with the Kiddush. This sounds like that the Kiddush Makam Seudah is trying to enhance the seudah. It's a din of the seudah. But look at the second shot of the Rashbam. Inami svara. Mi de'ikva Kiddush alayayin. Really, mi deraisa Kiddush b'dvarim is enough. But Chazal were mechayev us Kiddush agabi kois. So just like Chazal were mechayev Kiddush agabi kois, mistama alayayin shebasasa seudah hukva dechashiv. So this Rashbam, the second shot, is saying, what's the yotzei of Kiddush Makam Seudah? To enhance the Kiddush. Okay, that's a good start. Now let's move on, okay? Let me tell you an interesting halacha. I hope we should not negate l'maisa, but I heard two different shilas of the same nature. Someone Friday night had a very bad stomachache, and he was during the summer, and he decided he can't eat seudah tonight. He does not feel well. He's going to get a stomachache. Hopefully tomorrow he'll wake up, and he'll take and make Kiddush, the night Kiddush again, and have 3 seudahs, but he's not eating at night. Or someone who's in a hospital, and he has intravenous, he's not eating. The question is, when someone's not having a seudah Friday night, is there any inyan of at least hearing Kiddush from someone else? Let someone come, make Kiddush for him. Or maybe, why are you wasting your time? If he's not going to be Makam Seudah, he's not yotzei Kiddush. And we would think, well, at least make here Kiddush. Zok the Birkei Yosef in the beginning of Reish Ayin Beis, if it's not B'mkom Seudah, it's not Kiddush. So you're not gaining. The Minchas Yitzchak in Chelik Chesim Olam, it's speaking about a choleh, mamash al shayla, intravenous. Of course, intravenous, by the way, is not an achila. It's all chemicals. But Zok the Minchas Yitzchak, there's no purpose from hearing Kiddush. Because he's not yotzei by hearing Kiddush if he's not Makam Seudah. And he quotes a Kaf HaChaim, which I looked up, and Kaf HaChaim says the biggest riot to this is, we all had this a few months ago. We had Yom Kippur Shechal B'Shabbos, and no one thought of making Kiddush, and don't drink, so big deal, you'll do something. Teretz says no. Without a Kiddush b'mkom seudah, it's not a Kiddush at all. Of course, the Minchas Yitzchak says a choleh should at least make sure to have Kiddush b'dvarim, like we did on Yom Kippur Shechal b'Shabbos. When you daven Ma'ariv, you have a mind, Mekadosh HaShabbos, to be yotzei Kiddush b'dvarim. Also, if someone was sick at night, he couldn't eat, by the next morning he feels better, then he has a chiyuv to make the regular Kiddush, Friday night Kiddush, and he has to make sure to have 3 seudas by day. Now, next point I should mention is, what does it mean, bimkoim seudah? Again, from the Pashtus, the word seudah means a meal. You can't eat in shul cake and be yotzei with that. And the truth is, from Toisves and Psachim and our Sugya Kuf Aleph, and the Rosh, on that Gemara, Rabbi Yain and Brachas Lamed Vavam Ad Beis, Rav Sternbuch and the Tshuva, Chelik Aleph Reish Samach Dal, that's Das Roiv Rabbi Seinu HaRishonim, that Kiddush b'mkoim seudah means literally, you make Kiddush, and then you wash to a seudah. And this is the shita of the Toisves Shabbos, Rabbi Kiva Eger will soon see, and that makes the Chayra a lot of sense. In fact, the Ein Yitzchak Chanan in the Tshuva Siman Yud Beis Yivkat and Zayin, he quotes many Rishonim that hold you have to have a Kiddush b'mkoim seudah gemura, and he says the Shulchan Aruch doesn't even mention that shita, because the minhag ha'olam, as you all know, is you have Kiddush and you have cake and you eat with that. So he says, why isn't it at least mention the Shulchan Aruch to have a seudah? But one thing I will tell you, there are many people who do not eat by Kiddush and shul. Why? They want to have a seudah gemura. It's based on the simple reading of the Gemara, Kiddush b'mkoim seudah. And of course, the Tzidua, the Shita of the Vilna Goyen, in Ma'aserav Siman Kuf Chav Beis, that even the day Kiddush, you only do that when you have a seudah gemura following the Kiddush. Now, before we explain the minhag ha'olam, I just want to make a point that there's another reason why some are mahada not to eat by Kiddush and shul. And that is what the Shulchan Aruch and Reish Mem Tes Siv Beis and Siv Gimel say. There's a chiyuv when it comes to Seudah Shabbos to eat l'tayavayin. It should be with an appetite. And therefore the Mechaber in Shulchan Aruch says, not only don't eat Erev Shabbos close to this man, you'll come into Shabbos full, but he speaks about, the way the Magen Avraham explains, there was a minhag that they made Kiddush Friday night, and then they had grimzel. Grimzel was some type of a cooked food, a mezonos. So they made Kiddush, they made a mezonos, ate the grimzel, and then they washed. So the Magen Avraham says it's wrong, because by the time you finish with your grimzel, you have no appetite for the seudah. Zok to Bi'alacha, the same applies to the day Kiddush. If you go in shul after davening, you make Kiddush, and you eat, you're Mahadir in Kiddush Rabbah, and like today they have everything but bilkulach, salad bars and fruit platters and sushi and choleh. So you come to the seudah, you're not hungry. So he says, be careful. Even if the minhag is to eat by a Kiddush and shul, don't come on without an appetite. And I must mention, maybe it's even more important, that derech eretz kadmol laTorah, a person comes home, or some that should say he has to be rolled home after a Kiddush, and he looks at the food. I can't look at the food. He ate so much in shul. His wife worked in the Seudah Shabbos, or his mother worked in the Seudah Shabbos. So it's vada lacking in the derech eretz kadmol laTorah. So if someone does eat a Kiddush in shul, make sure you eat it with moderation to have an appetite. Now people say, yeah, but if I don't eat by the Kiddush, I'll insult the Baal Simcha. I always thought fakert. I said, I tell the Baal Simcha, I didn't come to eat. I came just for you. Mamash l'shem shemayim. If you eat up a storm, maybe you came because of the food. But the Maisa, when someone does eat by a Kiddush, he has to eat chacham einav b'kreisai. Make sure there's enough room for the seudah. But the question is, what's the justification? If we hold you have to have Kiddush b'mkoim seudah, and the tie to the word seudah is seudah, how could you use a b'mkoim seudah? How could you use cake? So, to my knowledge, the first that we find that's matzik the minhag is the Geonim. The Torah in our Siman Reish Ayin Gimel quotes the Geonim, which of course is before the Rishonim. And the Geonim say this, that the Gemara says Ein Kiddush b'mkoim seudah, Ein tzarich sheyigma kol seudasai. El afilu achal davar mu'it, oy shasa kois yayin, shechayiv alav bracha. Either he ate a davar mu'it, a small amount, doesn't say what, or he drank wine, enough to make a bracha achroina, that's what bracha means, With that, he's yotzei Kiddush Makam Seuda. V'dafka she'achal lechem oishasa yayin. Aval achal peirais loy. That's the lashon quoted of the Tshuvas HaGoinim. Now, we don't know where this Tshuvas HaGoinim, but that's what the Torah quotes. Did you notice that he's expanding the heta of B'mkayim Seuda? You don't have to have a Seuda, a kazayis of bread, a pas, or wine. Very interesting, like two extremes. But the shaila is, if davar moed would be a piece of cake, I would understand it's a Kiddush. You don't have to wash cake. But davar moed is pas, so what's the Kiddush? There it's the Murdik Kiddush. Because the Shulchan Aruch and Reish Tzadik Aleph, the Magen Avraham says it clearly. To be yotzei Seuda Shabbos, whether it's Leil Shabbos, Day Seuda, Seuda Shlishis, you have to have a minimum of a kebeya of pas plus, a little more than a kebeya. And the Magen Avraham explains because a stam Seuda is more than a kebeya. Kazayis is nice, you have to bench on a kazayis, midrabanan. But a Seuda is a kebeya plus. Oh. So now I understood the guy is saying a big chiddush. To be yotzei Seuda Shabbos, you need more than a kebeya. To be yotzei that the kiddush is chal b'mkayim Seuda, we're makel a kazayis is enough. Half the amount is good enough for b'mkayim Seuda. And that's the way the Shulchan Aruch paskins in Reish Ayin Gimel Sifei. And he says, "Lashon kasva go'ainim, afilu achal davar mu'it, lechem or wine, but peiros not." Okay.
You have to wash, and when you wash, you have to
No, you have to wash. No, to washing, to wash and make tekios only with the kebeya. But you zichar wash your hands. You're right. But you're going to have pas soon, maybe. But what's interesting is, where does this come from? That wine helps. Where does it come from that kazayis pas helps? So the Vilna Gaon, even though he didn't hold it as halacha, but he said the word b'mkayim Seuda is mashba dava hasoyed. In other words, the word Seuda has two meanings. Either means a meal, which means a meal, no cake. Cake's not a meal. Or Seuda is soyed, and a kazayis of pas is somewhat soyed. I'm going to get that in a moment. So we're going to get to that soon. One second. So this is what the Gaon says, that Kiddush b'mkayim Seuda works with a davar mood of pas. But the bigger Kiddush of the Gaon is, how does a revius of yayin come into the picture? It's not a Seuda. So the Gaon, since the Gemara in Brachas Lamed Hey says that wine gets its own bracha because it's soyed u'misameach, yayin is soyed. In fact, the Mechaber says in Reish Chesiv Yud, if someone drank one too many cups of wine and he benched on the wine, he's yotzei with benching, because yayin is soyed. Now, if he benched on grapes, he's not yotzei, because it's the wrong bracha. But on wine, he's yotzei benching. So the Gaon is learning up that the shitas hagoinim is lav dafka Seuda. It's the word soyed. Soyed means a kazayis of pas or a vias of wine. So now we start to see minhag ha'olam. Although Rishonim don't seem to accept this minhag, but the Gaonim preceded the Rishonim. Now, the shaila is, when you learn the Gaonim and you learn the Mechaber, you're a little perplexed. He says, a kazayis of pas and wine. Why doesn't he mention the most typical Kiddush b'mkayim Seuda? A kazayis of cake. You'll say, maybe cake doesn't work, because grapes don't work, pears don't work. That's illogical. Because since the Gaonim says that a revius of yayin works, why does a revius of yayin work? Because it's soyed. We would almost say that kolshkein mezonos is soyed. The chiddush is yayin is soyed. But it's illogical to say wine works and a kazayis of cake doesn't work. But we could do better than that. The same reason that wine works, because it's soyed and it's shivas haminim, it's chashiv, so it's a big enhancer of the Seuda. Maybe that's why the shivas haminim includes wheat. So cake has yichus, like wine, and it has soyed. But maybe even more than that. If you use a piece of baked cake, baked items are a suffix pas. If you convey a Seuda on cake, you have to wash and bench. So maybe cake is even better than wine, because it's a suffix pas. And this prompted the Magen Avram, on our Mechaba, Sivkat Yud Aleph, he says, Peiros doesn't work, but Oichel mini targima, mihei mine dogim, yotzei. If you eat targima, now if you remember the Pesach Pesachim, Kuv Zayin Amid Beis, Tois says by targima is types of desserts. It could be a fruit, it could be any dessert, but he's saying if you have a mezonos targima, it's also good for Kiddush B'Mekayim Seuda. Now, what does he mean? So he doesn't necessarily mean cake. He means any mezonos item. What's the svara? Because mezonos item is soyed and yichus. I did find the Guinness V'Rodim, Gimel Simon Yud Beis. He lived be'erech the time of the Magen Avram, and he says that when you have cake for Kiddush B'Mekayim Seuda, it's certainly good because cake is suffix pas. So we see that cake is certainly good, and the Magen Avram says tagima, which could mean a baked mezonos, is also good. In fact, the Sefer Piskei Tshuvos, Ha'ara 70, says a Chiddush. I'm not sure that everybody agrees to this. It's a very big Chiddush. He wants to say that Toisvis, the Rosh, Rabbeinu Yoina, that whole dafka Seuda, no cake, but baked cake does work. Because it's a suffix pas. Now that's a very... Right, I understand, as opposed to cooked. We'll soon see. But it's a Chiddush Pella, because the Maisa, the Rishonim learned that it has to have a Seuda. Regular baked mezonos may be a suffix pas, but not a Seuda. So I don't think that's correct. But no doubt about it, we have a Gaonim that says mezonos product, cooked, and certainly baked mezonos product, would work for Kiddush B'Mekayim Seuda. And that's the sheet of the Yerabah, Chayodam, the Rav Shulchan, the Kitzah, Mishnah Rosh Hashana, and that is definitely the minhag ha'olam. Whenever you see a Kiddush going on in Shul, unless they have bilkulach, they're relying on the Gaonim, Shulchan Aruch, with the Magen Avram's Hezbah. Now someone asked me an intelligent question. Can you be yotzei Kiddush B'Mekayim Seuda by using kugel? Shalmi kugel, potato kugel, lukshen kugel, any lukshen kugel. Now, or, I guess he's a creative fellow, he wants to be yotzei Kiddush B'Mekayim Seuda with choleh. So obviously he has to have a kazayas of choleh, of barley to be yotzei. So I know where he's coming from, but we know the answer. He understood that cake is used because cake is a suffix pas. And he's right, cake is a bigger mila. But doesn't mean that cooked mezonos doesn't work. Cooked mezonos is still mezonos, that's soyed. Now, Yishalmi kugel or any lukshen kugel, the lukshen is first cooked and then it's baked. Most poskim hold as a din of cooked because it was fully cooked and it's edible. What's the nafkamina? First of all, if a person ate a whole tray of Yishalmi kugel, so besides the stomach ache, he doesn't have to bench. Why? Because if you convey seudah on cooked mezonos, you don't have to bench. V'oid, if he wants to put a piece of Yishalmi kugel into a steaming hot choleh or hot soup, there's no problem of bishul because aim bishul acha bishul. How do we consider it a ma'isafiyah to be yesh bishul acha fiyah? Most poskim hold that once it's cooked, even if it's subsequently baked like kugel, as a din of bishul. But lemaisa, we're not worried. There was Nidbru, Chelik Ches, Lamed Aleph, and Simon Yudalef, Chelik Yudalef, Simon Zayim, and Rabbi Yashiv, and Shmir Shabbos, all say that even cooked mezonos, farfel, lukshen kugel, lukshen, is also good for Kiddush B'Mekayim Seuda. Now, I used to wonder, Chinese are very proud of Chinese food, or Italian food, because they have nothing else but food. But we are proud of the Bavli and the Yishalmi. Why is it that we have something called a Yishalmi kugel? Well, Yishalmi is famous for his kugel. So I saw in the Sefer Ma'or Shabbos, he quotes Rabbi Baharan, that one said that because when people come to shul and they have a long davening and then they have cake for Kiddush after davening, they might eat too much cake and then they're eating without tilsedayim and without hamoitzi, without benching. So the minhag Yishalayim to avoid this problem is that they only gave Yishalmi kugel. So that's Ma'aseh Kedeira, and no matter how much you eat, you can't go wrong by having a chiyuv to bench. But it doesn't mean you can eat a lot. He's just saying we avoided one of the problems. So Yishalmi Kugel is as a heros in Hilchais Brachas. But obviously, there wouldn't be a shaila of being yotzei Makam Seuda with Yishalmi Kugel, otherwise they wouldn't do it. So the Teretz Rabbis were very convinced to say that to have any mezonos product, whether it's baked or cooked, is good enough for Makam Seuda. Someone asked me, I guess for the women at home, they want to have a bowl of cereal. So if you have a mezonos cereal, whether it's cooked mezonos, whether if it's shaykh to make a chvrina or oatmeal, it's not shaykh, but that or mezonos cereal, that would be a kiddush b'mkayim seudah. Good question, important question. People are on diets. Can you be yotzei kiddush b'mkayim seudah with rice cake or with sushi? Not a very heimish option, but is that okay? So let me first be clear. Many people hold that on rice cakes you make an adama. So obviously it wouldn't be acceptable. Also, sushi, depending, some make a mezonos on the rice, some make only on the fish, on the vegetable. I'm talking about you have a kazayis of mezonos rice. Can you be yotzei kiddush b'mkayim seudah with that? So the emphasis is there's nothing in the poskim about this. Avada, they don't have sushi and Shulchan Aruch or rice cakes because they didn't have it. But you have rice in Shulchan Aruch, and yet we don't have anything about Kiddush B'Mkayim Seudah. Maybe Pasha just wasn't practical. But I did look into the Heintige Poskim. Rav Steinman and Rav Chaim Kanievsky Zichronim Levracha are both quoted as saying it's good because the Ikka Maila of cake or tagima is it's soyed, and rice is soyed. That's why you make a mezonos. But the Chazoin Evadia Chelik Beis on Bekuf Memalv and the Sefer Kovetz Halachos is the end of Tov Samach Gimel. Both say emphatically that it can't be good. And the truth is, it's a good svar to understand why it doesn't work. Because in many halachos, rice cakes, even if it's mezonos, is very different than mezonos. First of all, ikkev tafel, when you have a mezonos, it becomes a mezonos. But if you have sushi, rice, and fish, it's not automatically ikka. Number two, if you change location after eating mezonos, and you come back, you don't make a new mezonos. But if you change location after eating rice, it's a regular burn of fashes. It doesn't need bracha b'mekayim. The rice is not a safek hamoitzi. Rice you're allowed to eat out of the sukkah, even though we don't eat mezonos probably out of the sukkah. So rice is not a chashuv of food. Besides that, it's not chameshes min doga, that's for sure. It's not zayin minim. It's not a chashuv of food. It's basically a vegetable that's soyed. So I was thinking to give it a little more hezbah. If the yisoid is that we want to make a kiddush b'mkayim seudah to make a chshivas of the kiddush, so we have a partial seudah. No, a partial seudah on mezonos is chashuv. A seudah on rice not a chashuv of food. Maybe more than that, if you hold kiddush b'mkayim seudah is a din in the seudah, rice oich me'as seudah. So lemaisa, it's not pashit to yotzei kiddush b'mkayim seudah by using rice. Someone asked about granola cereal or granola bars. So that's easier to deal with because granola and granola bars is adama. And there's also safek bracha achrayna, so on Shabbos certainly we don't get involved with safek bracha achrayna. Bekitza, granola bars, granola cereal, that's an adama, is certainly not good. Rice is a little more of a shayla, as we said, because the bracha is mezonos. Next question comes in different forms, and that is, when could a person use wine or grape juice for kiddush b'mkayim seudah? Now, until today, you would wonder, using wine for b'mkayim seudah, wine is good for kiddush. How's wine b'mkayim seudah? But the emes is, today it has a very good basis. The Geonim, the original heta of using cake, does not talk about cake. It talks about a kazayis of pas and wine. But what's the pshat? How could wine be b'mkayim seudah? So that we saw that the Vilna Gaon explains. Because since yayin is soyed, so wine is chashuv. And we could add yayin is also from the shivas haminim, so it's soyed and has yichus, it's good enough. Rabbi and the Magen Avram, Taka, holds like this. Comes again Rabbi Kiva Eiga, on the page, on the Magen Avram, and the Kiva Eiga says, I don't understand. If Rabbeinu Yoinem Masech the Brachas, and Tosfos and other Rishonim say you have to have a Seudah Gemura, So how could you use wine? So Rabbi Akiva Eiga, la halacha holds not like the Goinim, not like Magen Avram. You can't use cake or wine. The Tosis Shabbos and Sivkot Yudalf has the same shita. The Kitzur says a milder lashon that wine is only good la'eis hatzoyrich. Now, what I found enlightening, the Mechaber says you're allowed to use kazayis pas or wine for Kiddush b'mekayim Seuda. Then the Ramah adds on that, oy bazoi, when you have a Shabbos bris, and the Rav who gets the brachas makes a bar priyagofen, theoretically he could drink a revius of wine, a little more for Kiddush, and no problem. Where's Kiddush b'mekayim Seuda? With the yayin. But says the Ramah, we don't rely on that. Rav, don't drink the wine. Who drinks the wine? You give it to a child. Like you do Friday night, those that make Kiddush and Shul. So after Shleim Bezalman and Shmir Shabbos, Nun Dalet, Sivkot and Pei Beis, what changed? The Ramah says you could use drinking wine, like the Mechaber. So why do you change it and why do you give it to a cotton? So Shleim Bezalman says, because the Ramah hold that wine is not a good idea. Because Toisvis and the Beinu Yaina and many Rishonim hold Dafka Seuda Gemara. So we see in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Ramah, that although wine is good like the Geonim, it's not simple. But to me was a Chiddush Gadol, which is very relieving, I should say. The Mishnah Berurah in Sivkot and Chafei brings the Magen Avram that says Yayin and Tagim is good, but Akiva Eiga says don't use wine for Kiddush b'mekayim Seuda. Now I looked at this again and again, and there was something very wrong. Rabbi Akiva Eiga objects to using two things. Don't use wine, and don't use mezonos. Only pass. The Mishnah Berurah quotes the Rabbi Akiva Eiga, and he only mentions don't use wine, only b'mekayim atchak. Why does he mention Rabbi Akiva Eiga's shita, don't use wine or cake? So then I understood, and that's the beauty of learning it properly, Mishnah Berurah seemed to have made a compromise. Wine is soyed. Okay. But Lamaisa, mezonos is more soyed. And it's more doimet to pass. So Mishnah Berurah saw Rabbi Akiva Eiga, and according to Rabbi Akiva Eiga, he didn't have Kiddush and Shul. And he made a compromise. Wine only b'shas atchak. But mezonos, minhag ha'olam, you could let it go. Loimi by cake, that's suffix pass, so it's even better. But even regular tagima, cooked mezonos, lukshen kugel, is good enough. So here we have, I can't say l'chol hadayis, but at least we could say the Mishnah Berurah seemed to sanction the minhag ha'olam that makes a kiddush and has a mezonos, a kazayis of mezonos product, and yotzei with that. Now, Lamaisa, the Rabbi Yashiv in the Chuvas in Chelik Aleph Chav Dalet, someone asked him, what's better for Mekayim Seuda, or revius of wine, or mezonos? So he says, Avada, a mezonos is better. So I can't say, La halacha l'chol hadayis, don't forget the Vilna Goyen Shita, the Rishonim hold Dafka Seuda Gemura, but we definitely understand the minhag ha'olam that makes Kiddush and Shul, and has cake, whether it's baked or cooked, lukshen kugel, they're both good. Using wine, and I'll give you a few examples. The bacher and the yeshiva that cannot eat any wheat product, and typically the yeshiva davens early, they have a seudah, like an hour and a half, and then they have a seudah. So what should you do for Kiddush b'mekayim Seuda? Rather by the seudah, there's some have an eitzah, there's some use oat products, some use gluten-free, but what is it for Kiddush b'mekayim Seuda? So Lamaisa, the Mishnah Berurah himself says, Makam Tchak, you could rely on wine. Or Pesach. You're to make a simcha on Pesach, and you don't eat gebrocks. What do you give for Makam Seuda? There's no mezonos product. So here we have the halacha that using wine is acceptable. It's the Geonim, it's the Shulchan Aruch, and even those that are mefakpik agree b'mekayim hatchak. Now, Lamaisa, that's why if someone is to make a Kiddush on Pesach, you could serve wine. Now, I'm not saying that people that come have to dafki eat by the Kiddush. Maybe for them it's not Mekayim Atchak. Come wish Mazel Tov and go home. Or do you have to drink 2 revius of wine? But that's optional. But we definitely could say that the person wants to make a Kiddush, he could serve wine as B'mekayim Seuda. The next question is, how much wine if you want to be yotzei b'mekayim seudah, how much wine do you have to drink? In other words, let's say I make Kiddush. So I drink l'chatchila revius for Kiddush, and really I could be yotzei with a malay lugmav. Let me give you the numbers. A Kiddush, you could be samech that revius is 3 ounces. Even though the bigger sheet, but for that you could be samech on 3 ounces, and a malay lugmav is 1.9 ounces. So when I make Kiddush, I would have either 3 ounces or 2 ounces. Now I want to be yotzei with drinking wine b'mekayim seudah. Do I have to have an additional revius b'mekayim seudah? Or as long as I have the volume of a revius, it's good enough? So the emes is that most poskim, beginning with the Bach, Taz, Prisha, Lavush, Magen Avram, Mishnah Berurah, all say if you want to have b'mekayim seudah, you have to have an additional revius. 1 revius for the Kiddush, or my lugmav, and a revius for b'mekayim seudah. And that's the way the Mishnah Berurah paskins. But the emes is in Svara, there's a big makam l'chalek. Because if he yotzei b'mekayim seudah because you have the sa'id of wine, why do you have to have a double revius? And taka the Even HaOizer, printed in the back of Shulchan Aruch, and I saw also the Aruch HaShulchan, they wonder why double revius. The thing is you have to have a revius of sa'id. But Lamaisa, the Mishnah Berurah, like most poskim hold, that obviously you have to have 2 different shtiyas. So definitely we should say, if you want to do it right. Don't forget the whole drinking wine is not so pashut. Have a like lugmav at least for the Kiddush, and a revius for the seudah, for the Kiddush makam seudah. The poskim do point out that it's kedai l'chatchila upon him, first drink for the Kiddush, and then drink for the seudah. In other words, if it's 2 shtiyas, don't make it into one. That might also avoid an issue of ein oisem mitzvahs chavilas. Like you're just mass producing 2 mitzvahs, so you separate it, it's probably a better eitzah. Also, what's interesting is that this is also negeya for nashim that don't come to shul, and they're home, and they're on diets, they don't want to have cake, whatever the story is, but they want to make Kiddush and have just salad, lamashal. So I'm not getting into it, it's considered makam atchak. But let's say it's a makam atchak, they want to have Kiddush, and just eat salad, they'll have the seudah when the husband comes home. Or someone that's celiac that cannot eat any wheat product. So let's be practical, okay? If he could somehow, again, have a makam seudah mamish, fine. But if not, the best way to do it is have 5 ounces, a becher that has 5 ounces, which is very small. Don't forget this hot cup is 8 ounces. So 5 ounces, very little. And basically drink 2 ounces, then 3 ounces, and you're fine. What's more practical, especially for nashim, don't want to drink 5 ounces of wine. So the next question is, will grape juice work for b'mekayim seudah? So you're probably wondering, what's the shaila? The Gemara says in Bava Basra, and the Shulchan Aruch says this, that grape juice you yotzei Kiddush l'chatchila. So why shouldn't it be good to b'mekayim seudah? And the emes is, I found a long list of poskim that say just that. What's wrong with grape juice b'mekayim seudah? And Moshe said it, the P'siyah Chachma, the Mikdash Eliyahu, Chel Galef is a beautiful tshuva. The pickbook here is, why is wine acceptable for Kiddush b'mekayim seudah? Because it's soyed. What is soyed in grape juice? If you have grapes from b'mekayim seudah, it doesn't work. So how can it be grapes doesn't work and wine does work? Teretz has to be, it's the alcohol in the wine that's soyed. Oy bazoi, grape juice that does not yet have alcohol, maybe it's not good for soyed. And that's the taina of Rabbi Yashiv. Rabbi Yashiv had a shita that grape juice is not like yayin l'chol davar. It's not choshev enough yayin poitem mini mashka, and definitely not good enough to be soyed and be used as b'mekayim seudah. However, as I told you, I think almost all other poskim say it's good, and the svar I think could be pashut. The Gemara says in Masechta Sukkot Daf Mem Tes, when a person drinks a lot in one time, there's much more svia than when he eats slowly or even quickly. Because when you eat, it takes longer than when you drink. Now, I once gave a shir about grape juice. And I said that the reason why the Welt is saimach on grape juice became seudah because you're drinking a lot of grapes. So someone raised his hand and said, I work in Kedem, in the grape juice department, and I forgot the number, but it was a guzma of grapes that go into 1 cup of grape juice. I think it was 40 grapes that go into one cup of grape juice, 8 ounces, if I'm not mistaken. But a guzma of grapes. So it makes sense, when you eat grapes, you can't eat that quick. But you drink down, maybe even if it's 20 grapes, but that's soyed. And the Gemara says the lukshen that the legimais is soyed. But whatever the case is, I could say most poskim hold that grape juice is acceptable for Mikhaim Seuda. Rabbi Yashiv Grada in the Ashrei Ish added, for someone that's allergic to wheat products, he could be Saimach on grape juice. So Ay Bazoi, it's very good. You can give an Isha or a Chayla that doesn't want to eat any wheat product, take a grape juice, a cup of 5 ounce grape juice, it's very easy to drink, and you yotzei with the grape juice as Kiddush b'mkoim Seuda. Oh, we'll get to night soon. Now, I should mention, if someone wants to be a little mahader, if he can, make Kiddush on grape juice, drink the amount, and then you could have 3 ounces of wine. So your yotzei l'chol day is because the makam Seuda you have wine, but really if you have wine and grape juice, you should make Kiddush on the wine because wine is more chashuv than grape juice. But that's just an einfel. Now the story that we mentioned about the person that cut his finger, had he had a revius of wine before he cut his finger, it still wouldn't help because we'll soon see that the poskim say even if wine is good, it's only good for the day Seuda, which is the Rabbanan. For Kiddush Leil Shabbos, wine doesn't work. Next question, if someone is allergic to wheat products and he has a serious reaction, he can't play games, and he can't drink wine either, is an option eating other foods, fruits, vegetables, potato kugel, a nice piece of meat. So, the way we learn now, it's absolutely wrong, because really you have to have a seudah gemurah, that's Taisus. The Goinim say, tagima or wine, veloy peiros. Not mezonos, probably doesn't work. And enechanami. Light the goinim, there's no havamina. But a later goin was the shiltiki boirim. This is in the back of Masechta Psachim. It's daf nun ches in the oizva had the print. And he says, a chiddush gadol, but it has a basis. The Gemara says in Beya, I guess that's what he's based, he doesn't quote Gemara, but that's what it's based on. Gemara says in Masechta Beya, that the Seuda Shabbos is chashuv, and even Aroi is kaiveya le'inyan ma'isa. Rashi explains, Achila Shabbos chashuva, v'aroi shalom hareyu kva, v'chayev b'ma'isa. Even a small amount of Shabbos Achila is chashuv. So Zok the Shulti Geboirim, Seuda Shabbos, even in Aroi is chashuv. So he says, if someone makes Kiddush, and only has other foods, peiros, your vegetables, about the meat, chicken, would be good for Kiddush b'mkoim Seuda because it's chashuv. Now, I think what he means to say is, it's not soyed, but maybe for Kiddush b'mkoim Seuda, it's good enough to be chashuv. Achilas kva. Maybe if you learn that's a din in the Kiddush, so it's the fact that you're eating something chashuv. This is what the Goinim say. The Shmir HaShabbos in Nundal Sifkat and Peidal, the quotes of Shlomo Zalman. They say an interesting thing. Where do you know the chiyuv of Kiddush b'mkoim Seuda? The Kerasel Shabbos Einig. Where does the Gemara learn that Achila Shabbos is always chashuv, even a small amount? The Kerasel Shabbos Einig. Same pasuk. So the Shmir Shabbos says maybe that's why it works. But as good as it seems, the Shulchan Aruch rejects this. The Mechaber says veloy peiros, and the Shulchan Aruch held that peiros doesn't work. And the only thing is, the Chai Adam, followed by the Mishnah Berurah, says, a cholash liboy, if someone is shvach, can rely on this shulti gibayim, then any food is good for Kiddush b'mkoim Seuda. So I was thinking, maybe that would be the eighth for someone that's allergic. He can't wait the 2 hours till the Seuda. Cholash liboy, he has the eitzah, maybe he feels a little better, I'll take a piece of potato kugel, looks like lukshen kugel, but that's not the heta. The heta is this shilti gibayim. But what's mavaldik in the Sefer Maisa Ish Chelik Hey Simon Ahmed Tzadik Aleph, there was a Gadol Grada, Moshe Salvechik, asked the Chazon Ish that he cannot eat any wheat products, and he was a choleh, he could eat very little. So the Chazon Ish said, when it was asif him to eat only vegetables, he can make Kiddush and be yotzei with the vegetables. Why? Because that's his achila. That's achila shalai. And it's choshev. So Chaim Kanievsky in Derech Sicha, it's also printed in the bottom of the Sefer, of that Sefer Ma'aseh Ish. This is Chaim Dik, and he said it's a very shiraya. Because the Gemara in Sukkah, Daf Chav Ches says that Shammai HaZaken was very machmin al Sukkah, and even a baby ate in the Sukkah. So the shayla is, why baby eat in the Sukkah? Baby just drinks milk, not chayiv in Sukkah. So Chaim says, because for the baby, that was its supper. So for the chayil, that's its supper. And there's a second raya. Listen to this. Yidden benched when they ate the mon. Mon wasn't the food, so how could you bench? Teretz says, if that's your sustenance, if that's your survival, if that's your svi, it's good enough. So that's what the Chazon Ish held. So Lamaisa, I think we could say that although it's not soyed, maybe it's a seudah. Yeah, mezonos is soyed, but maybe if for the choleh, that's a seudah. So we're using the word soyed and seudah interchangeably. But Lamaisa, we could say, like Mr. Brewer says, chalash libai has a het to be saimech on potato kugel or vegetables or anything that goes into the het of the goinim shita. Now, where this is a little more of an issue is on Pesach, for someone that wants to make a Kiddush. So really he should not rely on the shulti giboyim, because you have the eitzah of wine, grape juice. But if someone insists that he has these chalash libay, he could take eggs or whatever else they serve by a Pesach Kiddush. Now we have a few assorted shilas, but let me just say, regarding Kiddush b'mekayim Seuda, the right order is, the best would be Seuda Gemura Pas. If that's not shaykh, cake is a little better than cooked mezonos, but mezonos is also good. Then there's wine, and if there's mamish no choice, you could be saimech on Paris. Now a few general questions I want to mention, which is pashut. When a person has to have a kazayis for makam Seuda, it has to be a kazayis b'gedei achilas pras, says the Ketzos HaShulchan and Pei Aleph Seed Cotton Bays. Because every achila has to have a shem achila. It's not only matzah, you have to have a kazayis achilas pras, it's achila. So this is a big problem, because today's Kiddush Rabbah, which gives new meaning to that word, has so many other foods that a person come eats a bite of cake. You have to have a kazayis of cake. You don't count the filling and the cream. It has to be kazayis of cake. So people get distracted by other foods and they never have a kazayis of cake, and then yotzei Kiddush become Seuda. Rather, the same thing is true every Seuda Shabbos. You have to have a kazayis of pas or kebeya of pas to be yotzei the Seuda Shabbos. The next question that you asked is a good question. We had the shayla, someone wanted to visit a parent in the hospital here in Borough Park, in Mamani's hospital, and he lived the other side of Borough Park, and the family was asking him to wait till he comes home to have the Friday night Seuda. But he told me to walk to the hospital and back, it was like a 40-minute walk, if he felt schwach. So he wanted to have Friday night, make Kiddush, the regular Friday night Kiddush, have a cake, a hot coffee was the ikka by him, and he'll come home and he'll have the Seuda. The question is, does the trick, so to speak, of Bimkoim Seuda, being a Seuda, work Friday night? So Pashtus will say, why not? If we paskin that it's Bimkoim Seuda, so why shouldn't it work Friday night? But the emes is, the Shmir Shabbos in Nundal, the end of Sivcha Beis, says it does work Friday night. And at the bottom he says, because Mr. Brewer speaks about wine, Shabbos, Friday night, he doesn't make a chilek leil Shabbos or day. What should be the problem? However, we do find, and maybe more of a reference to this, both the Magen Avram and the Mishnah Berurah in the end of Siman Reish Ayin Dalid speak about someone that was an oynis. He couldn't eat Friday night, so he didn't want to have. He couldn't have a Seuda. So both say b'makam oynis. You know what you should do? Make Kiddush Friday night. Have a kazayis of mezonos that you can handle. Tomorrow morning you feel better. Make 3 Seudas. B'makam oynis. So what do you see? That Mr. Brewer had no problem with making Kiddush Friday night on cake. So we have a good raya. But not really. Because the whole hefta was based on makam oynis. Who said it's good if it's not an oynis? But what's interesting is, Rabbi Yitzchak and Ein Yitzchak, the same tshuva in Archaim Sim and Yud Beis, he wants to say that even if you're saimach on cake, it's only a chiddush of the Geonim, the Laikataisis. That's only Shabbos day. Leil Shabbos, which Be'ikra is the Raisa, because don't forget Kiddush, Leil Shabbos is the Raisa, not Agab B'Kais necessarily, but Be'ikra is the Raisa, we do it L'chatchila. So I can't say that all Paiskim agree, but there's definitely what to be saimach on, and I guess going to visit a parent would be Makam Dechak Vada, Makam Einis. So then we could say he should make Kiddush before he goes, has Kedais of cake. Now, there's a little of an issue here, because like you mentioned earlier, by day Kiddush, we rely on Kiddush become Seuda. We come home, make a Kiddush again, because a Goffin you can't lose. But this person can't make Kiddush again, because he made the night Kiddush, he made it. So the best aids would be the family that's waiting for him, one of them should make Kiddush and have him in mind. Okay. Next question, Simchas Torah. So many people still keep the old-fashioned minhag of having a kafus at night after davening. But people get thirsty, hungry. Can you make Kiddush Leil Simchas Torah with cake, a coffee, whatever you want, and you'll make the Seuda when you get home? So the emphasis is Leil Shabbos is not so pashit. Maybe Leil Simchas Torah is also not so pashit. But then again, Leil Simchas Torah is only a Yom Tov Sheni, and the whole Kiddush Yom Tov B'chlal is only a D'Rabbanan. So it's a double D'Rabbanan. So I thought, L'maisa, that makes sense. I did find that the Archas Rabbeinu in Chelik Aleph Amud Shin Ayin Tes, that the Chazanish, the head of the Chazanish, made Kiddush on Simchas Torah. But that's a bigger raya. Because by the Chazanish, Simchas Torah was also Shmini Atzeres. So it was Yom Tov Rishon. So Ma'adav Yom Tov Rishon, Kal Yom Tov Sheni. Then I found the Dr. Chaim V'Shalom, the Minchas Alaza in Siman Tov Shenayin. Sukkot nights, he fared Tish for the Olam much later. But after davening, he went into the Sukkah and he made Kiddush and he had cake. And later he had the Tish. So I don't know if I guess he didn't make a second Kiddush, obviously. But that minhag was both days of Sukkot, both nights, I'd say. So obviously, even by the night Kiddush of Yom Tov Rishon, it works. The Shmir Shabbos has a problem that Lamaisa, that the Mishbura says every halacha of Kiddush applies to Yom Tov like Shabbos. But then again, Lamaisa is enough to be saimach on, that we could say that when a person has a reason on Shabbos, if there's a makam tchak, a makam tzayrich, to make the Kiddush become Seuda, and hopefully hear the Kiddush later. Now many have a minhag that even if they make Kiddush in shul, by day we're talking about, they go home and make Kiddush again. Now the mice you don't lose, it's only a guffin. But the question is, why do you do that? Do you have nervin? You ate in shul, obviously you rely on Kiddush become Seuda. What's your problem? So now we know why. Because the mice want to be yotzei the sheet of Rosh Hashana. And Taka the Samas Chaim and Simekuf Samach Vov and the Tshuvas Hanhagas, the Shita say certainly Aleph Kos Amardal and Heisim and Pei says Avada and Avada, it's kedai to make Kiddush at home. I would be remiss in not mentioning the Rav Moshe has a Kiddush. It's probably one of the longest igros. It's in Chelik Daled Siman Samach Gimel, and briefly it's in Yeridei Chelik Beis Kuf Samach Gimel, but it's a Geshmaki Yisoid. Rav Moshe says in the din of Kiddush b'mekayim Seuda there are two dinim. One din, which for us is important, yotzei the mitzvah of Kiddush, the Rais, the Rabbanim, but yotzei the mitzvah of Kiddush. But what's also important for us in shul is your Kiddush b'mekayim Seuda allows you to eat. Kiddush is a mitzvah and Kiddush is a matir. So Rav Moshe, if you don't have b'mekayim Seuda, you're not yotzei Kiddush, like the Gemara says, you're Kiddush by yotzei. But the Kiddush is enough to be matir what you're eating. So that would give meaning to those that make Kiddush and have an egg, the Mashal Pesach, and they go home. So, besides the fact that they have, if they drink an extra Revius, you have the Revius, you have this Kiddush, the Mata you have, but make sure to make Kiddush at home. Which of course explains why those that make Kiddush in Shul, maybe they want to be Saimach, it's not bread, but it's Matir. When they come home, they make Kiddush again. Another question, someone makes for his elderly mother or grandmother, and the Shiva had a bacha with the grandmother, and the grandmother Meshum Oifin will not make Kiddush. Maybe like a hekesh to Havdalah, whatever. But she's not making Kiddush, not happening. And she lives alone, but she doesn't mind eating alone, but she wants to have Kiddush. So the Enikel says he comes to his grandmother's house, he makes Kiddush, but he can't drink the wine, because it's not Mekayim Seuda. I said, don't worry. The Shulchan Aruch speaks about that in Reish Ayin Gimel Siv Dalet. Kiddush b'mekayim seudah is the one that's being yotzei the Kiddush has to have b'mekayim seudah. So make sure your grandmother has at least a malay lugma for the Kiddush, and make sure she washes right afterwards. In other words, he walks out, she follows him, she comes back, and she doesn't wash till later. No good. Make sure that she has a malay lugma of wine. Use grape juice, it's easier for her. And make sure she washes and has at least a kazayis, a kabeya for the seudah, and then it's perfect. So that's the way to do it. If she does want to make Kiddush, give her a 5-ounce cup of, give her a regular Kiddush cup, she can make it and drink a malay lugma, that's enough. Question. Someone is got a bracha by a bris, a Shabbos, or Yom Tov bris. So the emes is that really he could drink the wine if he has an extra vias and yotzei. But the emes is not to do that. Why? We don't rely on drinking wine. Theoretically, what the Rav could do is drink the kais and take a piece of cake right then and there and have them come seudah. But it's not practical. It's also not, politically correct. The oil is in the middle of a bris and he sits down and starts eating cake. But that would be an eitzah. Okay? The Yalkut Me'amloyas was not just a very beloved for Seif and Chumash. He was a Talmud of the Mishnah Lamelech, and he wrote the Mishnah Lamelech. He wrote over his Rebbe's Psukim. He has a famous Kiddush that Kiddush b'mekayim seudah means the Kiddush to be chal, you have to have b'mekayim seudah. Which means, if let's say I make Kiddush and I have b'mekayim seudah, the listeners don't have to have b'mekayim seudah. Now he's going with Moshe Svara that it's a matir. Now why do I say this? Even though we don't paskin like this, I'll tell you what's very negeya. It's always the twice a year shaila before the tekios and Rosh Hashana, where many people don't eat before a mitzvah deraisa, and they don't eat before the tekios. Many people make Kiddush and have b'mekayim seudah. But there's a problem with both. People can't wait so long, but lamaisa, eating before the tekios. So if this works for you, it's the best eitzah. See, some people don't need to eat before the tekios. They don't need the food, but they need a coffee. They need a drink. So the poskim say, if it works, and you don't eat it all, it's about the better. But what would be, if a person needs that coffee, and that's all he needs, listen to someone that's making a Kiddush, b'mekayim seudah, that's having cake. Here is Kiddush, and then drink your coffee. So you have Rav Moshe's heta of matir, you have the Mamloiz's heta of a Kiddush gemura, and also, b'chal, some say shtia before the mitzvah is mutter. It's not even his man Kiddush yet. And this way you don't have to eat. So that's something to think about. And achrein chaviv, let me tell you a davar nifla ma'oid, and it could be a half a share for itself. But let's say the following story. Someone ate Seuda Shabbos by day, forgot to say yotzei, but felt guilty benching over. Maybe guilty or lazy, I'm not sure which one. Didn't want to bench over. So he had a ha'or in the floor that he went to a Kiddush in shul, and he was yotzei Kiddush b'mekayim seudah sheneimol, Kiddush Rabbi in fact, and he did say ala mechir, and he did say yotzei. So he wants to rearrange his schedule. He'll say the Kiddush Rabbi was second seudah, and this is seudah shlisha, so yotzei is not ma'akev. That's a problem. First of all, we paskin in Shulchan Aruch, you have to have more than a kebeya pas for a seudah. Also, mitzvah srichas kavana, how do you rearrange, make it into a seudah? But Reisa Pella, the stipler in the new print of Simon Chaf Hey, has a long shtickle that this would work. The thrust of the tshuva is that you could be saimach on the sheet is that pasta of a kissin is good enough for Seuda Shabbos. But what's interesting is they just came out with a sefer, Mavaldik a sefer, Zechroinus it's called, the Heilige Chazinish that Chaim Kanievsky wrote, and there's a lot of Hiburim, and there the story is that happened with the stipler, and the Chazinish agreed to the Eitzah. So I don't know what he does with the mitzvah srichas kavana, but I do know that if you hold it's b'mekayim seudah, it's not such a jump to say it would help for the seudah. The only thing is, the problem with this is you have to rely on the sheet is that for Seuda Shabbos it's good enough a pasma b'kistin. But especially the dan that you're saying b'mekayim seudah works, it's not so hard to believe that it works for the seudah also. But I can't say all agree, but that's something, I got to talk to you all.